Racing, Wally Wilson jumped in front from Butcher's Bounty and Chantala, and Midnight Enemy are going out quickly from Style Days and Tassam, and they're being followed by Tony Broke, who's well back in the field as they swing the first bend, and Wally Wilson the leader.
Hello, I'm Roger Clemson. Welcome to This Is Your Life. Greyhound racing is the sport of battlers. Tonight is the story of a real battler. Our guest of honor tonight is a young man who is quite probably the youngest and the most successful greyhound tipster and owner in this country. His is a success story of independence, determination, and courage. As a young boy, like all young boys, he loved puppies. And together they reached the top. I'm on my way right now to surprise him at Wentworth Park. At this moment he's being interviewed by Ray Warren. He thinks for a television special about great racing dogs. Come along and join me.
Hi, I'm Ray Warren, and we're at Wentworth Park, and of course continuing our documentary into the great greyhounds of the past. One of which, of course, was Wally Wilson, one of the top sprinters in the last decade. With me is his very popular young owner, Gary Wilson.
Hello, Ray.
Roger Clemson.
How are you?
How are you, Roger?
The interview. How are you going?
Pretty good. Roger, Gary Wilson, a good friend of mine, Roger Clemson.
Gary, how are you?
G'day, Roger. How are
G'day,
you, pal?
nice to meet you. How are you?
Same here. Oh, great.
Good.
Couldn't be better.
That's tremendous. Look, I've got rather a surprise, Ray. Would
Yes.
you believe at this moment we are on national television, and the whole country's waiting for me to say, Ray Warren, thank you very much for your help, because, Gary Wilson, this is your life.
Can't believe it.
It's your Gary, would you like to sit down? First of all, Ray, can I just thank you for helping us to surprise Gary so successfully tonight?
It's been a very great honor, a great honor.
Now, Gary, a couple of weeks ago, you were watching this show at home in Cessnock, and when it was over, you leant back and jokingly said, Gary Wilson, this is your life, and your mother told you not to be silly. What do you think about it now?
I still can't believe it.
What can you add to that, Ray?
Nothing really, Roger, except to say that Gary has been a great ambassador for the sport that he loves so much, greyhound racing. And furthermore, he's been, I believe, a great inspiration to those people with similar disabilities. And Gary, God bless you, and I hope you enjoy tonight.
Thank you, pal.
Good night.
Ray Warren, thank you very much. Let's go back, Gary, to American Independence Day, July the 4th, 1951. Few men have been more independent than you, the second child born to Alan and Gladys Wilson at Linfield in Sydney. At 3 months of age, though, there's a tragic accident when you swallow a dummy. It becomes lodged in your throat. The doctor has to cut your throat to retrieve the dummy, but it wedges further down. Vital oxygen is cut off from your brain, and you lapse into a coma that lasts for 3 months.
The hospital called us 3 times to have one last look at him.
Gary, your mother Clara, your father Alan, and your brother Ken and sister Fay. Clara, you say that the hospital called you 3 times. Was he that close to death 3 times?
Yes, he was very close. They came and told us to have a last look before he went. So we went, and he hung on, and he just kept fighting. And He's still with us today.
Mate,
That's what he's all about.
you couldn't kill me with a meat axe.
Now, Alan, how did Gary become so much a part of everything? What about his rehabilitation?
Oh, he had to have a lot of speech therapy and 2 major operations on his legs, and this kept him in plaster for 12 months.
Now, I know that you and Clive were both determined to make Gary self-sufficient. How did you get him out of the wheelchair and onto the crutches? It must have been a very difficult thing to do.
Very hard, Roger. I took him, well, he was in hospital for 5 months, and they said they didn't think they'd be able to get him onto his crutches. He didn't have the confidence. I took him home and I strapped his crutches to his arms and put a crash helmet on him and stood behind him and belted him until he walked.
Rolled up newspaper.
And then we both sat down and had a good cry.
Got you walking, eh?
Yeah, I can't
Independence.
He got his independence. He
Yeah,
never looked back.
I'm glad I wasn't big. I would have got up and knocked him out.
Ken, your parents always pointed out to you and also to Gary that there were many people worse off than he was.
That's right, Roger. When he was small, he used to say, I wish I could play and walk like other children. And I said, well, think yourself lucky that you can get around. There's a lot of people that are worse off.
Faye, what would you like to add?
I just like Dad that he's always so happy and he helps to keep everybody's spirits up high.
Well, thank you all very much for sharing this night with Gary.
Thank you very much, Roger.
Gary, you attend schools for crippled children at Parramatta and Kingswood, and there was one close friend teacher who you had at Kingswood for 5 years. Now, I wonder if you can happen to identify this voice.
Hello, Mr. Magoo.
That's the voice you haven't heard for 10 years, Gary, yes? Your former headmaster and close friend who'll be flown from Suva, Fiji to be with you tonight, Frank Hilton. Now, Frank, what's all this about Mr. Magoo?
Well, Gary was affectionately known as Mr. Magoo on account of his short sight. He was a school comedian, and we had real fun. Every day we used to start off with Gary's joke, and I don't know whether you remember this, Gary. One day I was showing a film. It was an American film, and it was about the life cycle of a frog. And this American voice was saying, this American voice was saying, the 2,000, one single female frog can lay 2,000 eggs. And Gary just turned round to me and he said, gee, Mr. Hilton, I wonder what a married one could lay. He is a great inspiration. It's been great to see you, Gary.
Thanks very much,
It's been
Bill.
wonderful.
Frank, thanks for coming all this way from Fiji to be with us tonight. Frank Hilton, thank you. Gary, after Mr. Hilton leaves to take up an appointment in Fiji, you seem to lose interest in school. You're receiving an invalid pension and your family sees that you need a strong interest. Your father, who trained dogs in his youth, introduces you to greyhound racing, and you make tape recordings of races, studying the dogs almost every stride. Because of your poor vision, you cannot read, and your mother supplies you with every minute detail. Form, weights, box drawers. You become a walking encyclopedia on greyhounds.
Gary, you weren't much of a rugby league judge, but you could certainly pick winners at the Greyhounds.
Yes, Gary, an old friend, one of Sydney's leading sports commentators, Jeff Prenter. Jeff, will you tell us about Gary the tipster?
Well, Roger, I was sitting at Lidcombe Oval covering the West Penrith game, and we're out on the sideline, the modern-day rugby league press facilities, and young Gary was sitting next to me. And it came half-time, and I was listening to the races. I'd had a bet. I think I stamped my foot on the ground and said, oh, another second. This young fellow turned around and said to me, did you lose your money, mister? I said, I certainly did again. He said, well, listen, he said, why don't you give the horses away and stick to greyhounds? So I looked at him, I said, what do you know about greyhounds? Well, this time the second half had started, and he started to tell me what he knew about greyhounds. So during the second half, Western Suburbs scored a try, and I'd asked him whether he, what he was doing sitting next to me in the press seats.
I was a bloody Penrith supporter too.
You were a Penrith. You were more than a Penrith supporter. You were the Penrith mascot. Well, Roger, Western Suburbs scored a try, and young Gary tried to get to his feet, and he cheered. And I then noticed that he had his crutches by the side of him, and he had a pair of binoculars with one lens. And I realised that he couldn't see. So I said to him, I didn't want to disappoint him. We started talking about greyhounds. I don't think I saw any of the second half. All I was interested in was what Gary was going to tip me at the greyhounds that night. He tipped me 3 winners.
Well, that was just the start of it, I believe, really, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. That was a Saturday, and I went into the office, the Sun office, on the Monday, and I said to my sporting editor at the time, Con Simons, I said, listen, I want to write a story for you. It's a human interest little piece. So I wrote the story, and Con Simons said, is this kid on a pension? I said, yes, he's on a state pension. He said, would we be able to use him as a guest tipster? I said, I was hoping you'd suggest that. So I rang up Gary and said, how'd you like to tip as our special guest tipster? He said, oh, Mr. Prenter, he said, I'd love to. He said, I'd give away the football to do that. Well, Roger, for the next 12 meetings, this little fella here tipped 60 winners. And you know what? He's still tipping winners, aren't you, mate? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, too, and thank you, Jeff Prenter, for what you've told us.
Pleasure, Roger.
Thank you. Gary, your mother starts taking you to Richmond Greyhound meetings, and it's here that you strike up an extremely close friendship with that great personality and race caller, the late Frank Kennedy. I know he was, a great guy. And in 1968, you finally asked Frank to help you buy 2 pups. You only have a total of $100, Gary, and after a lot of searching, Frank finally settles for 2 that he believes in. But they are $400 each. However, Frank knocks the owner down to $50 each, and you come away with a brindle dog and bitch that you affectionately name Boo Boo and Susie. You give them love and affection, and using your pension money, you ensure that they get the right food and vitamins. It's the start of an unbelievable career, and we'll have more of Gary's story in just a moment.
Any second now.
All right.
Okay, Canada. Here we go.
Gary Wilson, Boo Boo and Susie, better known as Pace-O-Matic and Top Streak, are trained by Alan Chauncey and his wife and hit the racetrack like whirlwinds. Pace-O-Matic wins 5 of his first 6 starts, but the biggest thrill of your short career comes at Wentworth Park on the 14th of March 1970, when Pace-O-Matic becomes your first dog to race on a city track.
Whips them in, but around the turn into the straight, and Pace-O-Matic is galloping beautifully as well, clear in no danger of defeat, and Pace-O-Matic scores a great win from O'Dooley. Blue Dallas third in front of Law Maid, and then Beautiful Linen further back, South Fella from Quandy Alabas, and last of all was Mr. Phoenix.
Yes, Gary, you're in the big time.
Everybody had a tear in their eye that night.
You should recognize that voice, Gary. It's Alan Chauncey, his wife Fay, and with them your old mate, Pace-O-Matic.
Oh. He's a champion dog, isn't he?
Alan, I know that you trained both Pace-O-Matic and also Top Streak, but that first one at Wentworth Park must have really been something.
Roger, it was a big thrill. It was Gary's first dog, racing in the city for the first time. It was really a fabulous moment in my life.
Well, Frank Kennedy wrote a very moving article about that race, and here's part of what he said. This was a little boy's dream come true, his dog racing at one of the city tracks. As I started the broadcast with my well-known words, the hair moves up to the boxes and here they go, a little hand clutched my arm and trembled as I said, and Pace-O-Matic is racing away to score a brilliant win. As Gary turned for the congratulations of his many friends, I turned and walked away. I couldn't talk for the big lump in my throat. You see, I don't have the courage of Gary Wilson. Well, we all know that Frank Kennedy did have that courage, and he's certainly missed by everybody. Gary, he was your eyes at the races, and for years you two were a familiar sight, huddled together in the stand while Frank gave you a personal call of your dogs. He carried you everywhere. Well, now here's a message from Frank's widow, Ann Kennedy.
Hi, Gary. Sorry I couldn't be there with you tonight. Frank thought of you as a son, and I'm sure he would be very proud of the tribute being paid to you tonight. God bless you, Gary.
Ann Kennedy. Thank you very much, Alan Kay and Boo for being with us tonight. Gary, your dogs, Pace-O-Matic and Top Streak, hit the high spots, with Pace-O-Matic reaching the final of the National Derby in Melbourne and the Vic Peters Memorial Classic. He wins 21 races, while Top Streak finishes with 28. And there was another famous dog in there somewhere.
I decided to give him one of Zoomtop's brothers.
You should recognise that voice as well, Gary. It's the famous breeder, owner and trainer of the legendary Zoomtop, all the way from Ballina, Heck Watt. You gave Gary a dog, right?
Yes, we read about him in the paper, Roger, and the wife, Leah, and myself, we felt that we could do something to help him. So we gave him one of Zoomtop's brothers.
Must have been a pretty expensive puppy, I would think.
Yes, he was worth a bit of money, and he was quite successful, and we were very pleased about it.
Now, he was called Busy Bomber, isn't that right?
He won 12 races.
That's right. You used to call him Bill, didn't you?
Yeah, Big Bill.
Well, Heck, thank you very much for coming all the way from Ballina to help tell the story of Gary here tonight.
Thanks, Roger.
Gary, then came the big one. Alan and Faye Chauncey bred a litter of pups and you wanted to buy one. You couldn't see the pups to pick one out, so you decided on your own method of selection. Now, what was it?
I sat down on the ground and I said, the first one to lick me in the face is mine. So this big little woolly fluffy dog jumped up and licked me all over the face and kissed me all over the ears. So I said, he's mine for sure.
He was a pretty unusual looking pup, Gary. In fact, Alan Chauncey was going to have considerable difficulties selling him, I believe, because he had an unusual woolly coat. And you called him Woolly Wilson.
Yeah.
You reared the dog and then gave it to Heck's son Jeff Watt to train. And soon the name Woolly Wilson is splashed across every sports page in the country. He amasses a fantastic record and becomes the highest stake earning sprinter of all time, with prize money totaling $42,000.
To the bend and Woolly Wilson in front as they commence. The swing is clear now, followed by Devil's Thunder, and then came at the head of the others Sonny's Bomber, but it's all Woolly Wilson. Woolly Wilson wins easily. Second placing Devil's Thunder, third Sonny's Bomber. Woolly Wilson in front, coming to the home corner, is clear of Devil's Thunder, followed by Sonny's Bomber, but Woolly Wilson streaking away. And Woolly Wilson comes down to the line to score by 4 lengths. Devil's Thunder second.
He must be quite a dog.
Oh, beautiful. He sleeps on my bed.
Is he still your favourite?
Oh, yeah, he's still my favourite. Well, I think they're both my favourite. Well, Willie and Bluey are both my favourite.
Well, Gary, you've made many friends in the racing game.
Up to the turnstile, Amatic, the leader from Woolly Wilson, Pace-O-Matic, Busy Bomber and Top Streak.
But into the straight and Woolly Wilson's booted clear of Pace-O-Matic, and Big Willie will win the prize.
Gary, well-known race callers Paul Ambrosoli and Ray Conroy. Ray, it's absolutely amazing, you know, the response we had from guys like yourself when we started putting this show together.
Roger, we love him. We think he's wonderful. I think if the world today could take an example from Gary Wilson, what a beautiful nature he's got, and what a great sense of humour, what a beautiful world it would be to live in.
I keep power.
Rover, not okay.
Now, Gary, Ian Craig, also a very well-known race caller, of course, couldn't make it tonight, but he did record this message for you.
Hi, Gary. I often recall the days when we first became greyhound racing partners, and we went down to Alan Chauncey's to pick out our first pup. And you lay down in that kennel amidst all those little puppies, and this little bloke came up to you, licked you, and you said, Ian, this is the one for us. Ultimately, he was known, of course, as Style-O-Matic, a top racing dog in his era. Gary, congratulations on this, your night.
Paul, I think your association with Gary started back in the days when you were calling football for 2KA in the Blue Mountains.
That is correct, Roger. On those particular afternoons, Gary would be seated alongside of me on the football field. And during the commercial breaks, and moreover at half-time, there'd be an endless barrage of chatter relating about these two champion pups. And, of course, all owners' pups are champions. But it's now history, of course, Roger, just the fact that these did turn out to be exactly that.
And I think, Paul used to broadcast the football, and every time Penrith used to score a try, I used to punch him in the back. And I'm not kidding you, he got more bruises on his back by me punching him than he did on the bloody football field.
And you never hit him once, I bet.
No, sorry, I've got the scars to prove it. But, Roger, it's one of those things, I suppose. I've been fortunate enough to follow Gary's career from those days until now, and I suppose from that time until whenever. I suppose if anybody was the epitome of, well, willpower, self-motivation, moreover, respectability, and I think serves as a reflection on the simple, everyday things that we take so much for granted. Gary, you'll earn our unanimous vote every time.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, Gary, two more of your mates. Gary, two more of your mates, race callers Des Hoisted and Graham McNeice, couldn't break commitments tonight, but they too have sent you a film message as well.
Hi, Gary. I bet you're giving a dog a display tonight. And, of course, I suggest that you and Greyhound Racing have been reciprocal. You've been good for each other. On a more professional note, I'd like to wish you well, congratulate you on your great fight against adversity and success, and hope that you're having a magnificent night tonight. And now over to Graham McNeice, but I'd suggest before I go, Gary, that you don't tell any of your blue jokes, because after all, this is a family show.
Thanks, Des. Hi, Gary. I'm sincerely sorry that I can't be with you tonight. I've known you for some 8 or 9 years now, and I can honestly say that it has been a friendship that I, along with Frank, have greatly treasured. We always received a great kick when any of your greyhounds won, and let's sincerely hope that you have many more Willie Wilsons to come. Good luck, pal.
In just a moment, more surprises for Gary Wilson. Gary, you found a profession and a way of life through your dogs. You've pooled your earnings with your father and set up a training and rearing property on 150 acres just outside Cessnock. Gary, it's nothing for you to hop on a plane and attend race meetings right around the country. Alan, I believe that you have a recent story about Gary's independent travel, haven't you?
Yes, he left one Saturday afternoon to come down to Harold Park and didn't arrive home, and I got a phone call on Tuesday morning where he flew to Melbourne to Olympic Park and went broke and rang me up for money to pay the motel bill. So I wired money down to him, and we was expecting him home, and he hadn't arrived, and on Thursday night was listening to the wireless, and the commentator from the Gabba turned around and said, "I've got Gary Wilson here in the box with me."
Did you make any money at the Gabba?
Yeah, I think so. I made enough to get home. I made enough to buy a can of baked beans, which is all that punters, that's what we live on, baked beans.
Now, Gary, listen very carefully to this voice. Yes, the night certainly wouldn't be complete. Who else but Willie Wilson and his former trainer, Jeff Watt.
you from you.
Jeff, Gary has a great understanding with his dogs, and especially with Wooly, I believe.
Yes, he's got something with the greyhounds with Gary. There's the appreciation that he's got for them when they win, and the affection that he shows to them. Like, he proved this to me early when he got an offer of about $80,000 for the dog, and there was no way he was going to sell that dog. He thought it was just nothing could buy him.
You'll never sell him?
Oh, never. So, if I sell him, I wouldn't have nothing to keep my feet warm at night.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Wooly, for being with us. Gary, today you are one of the country's leading tipsters, and many people come to you for advice on dogs.
And he puts on a pretty good club act, too.
Yes, the man who introduced you to the club circuit, racing personality Johnny Tam. Good. Johnny, will you tell us about Gary, the nightclub performer?
The first time we produced him, Roger, was the Canterbury Bankstown Lees Club. And he took off with a routine of gags, a couple of which flew pretty close to the wind. And then he proved his versatility by producing a harmonica, and he played a bracket of songs, one of which, an old classic Edelweiss, brought many a tear to many an eye in that auditorium. He killed him.
Well, look, as a matter of fact, Gary and Johnny, I just happen to have in my pocket a harmonica. There just happens to be a guitar behind the settee there, Johnny, and also, as a matter of fact, I just happen to have some music in the back of the book here, which happens to be Edelweiss. So how about it, fellas?
You want an intro?
Yeah, so what key button?
Well, you've only got one key, G.
C, I. Okay. Edelweiss, right?
Edelweiss.
Gary Wilson, this is your life.
Furniture designed and built by Buzz. Guests on this program are brought together by TAA. And choose to stay at the Sydney Ramada Inn.